This is one of the new Supros. It's a Supro Model 50. Never had one of this model come in before. Problem description is volume drop, changed out power tube, possible screen grid resistor. So let's see what we see. All right, this is not going to be fun. Look at all that hot glue. But I see the problem. And you can see the problem too. Let me zoom in on it. See that leakage coming from that axial electrolytic right there. That's not supposed to be visible. Now, the problem is that this is a relatively inexpensive amp. I don't know what they're selling it for. It should not be a lot. It's a little single-ended thing with a single 6L6. But because of all the hot glue, well, it's not really hot glue, all the silicone, it's really difficult for me to get to this. And I've got to cut all these things joining the wires, move things out of the way, and excavate to get to here. Any amp which needs this much silicone is a poor design and a poor build. And I'm sorry, I don't care if someone has one of these and loves it. It's just a matter of time. This is some bullshit at any price point. Okay, about 40 minutes of excavation later, removing tons and tons of useless silicone. I got the faulty caps out. And what they are 247 microfarads in parallel to make 94 microfarad, equivalent to 100 microfarad. Ruby cap, not a very good cap. Sorry for those who think they're getting good caps when they get rubies. They're not worth the money, as you can see in this relatively new amp. So these are going away. I'll probably just put a 50 microfarad in there because 100 microfarad does absolutely nothing for an amp of this size with a single-ended tube and a small output transformer. It's a mythology that Bill M, to a large degree, rest in peace, started with his 100 microfarads into his juniors. Like it'll magically stiffen things up and give you more low end out of a tiny transformer with EL84s. In the process, the jacket on this Nichicon got a little bit torn up where the razor went a little too close to get that silicone off, so I could extricate the whole thing. The Nichicon here and here are good caps, and normally I could just put some electrical tape there or some fresh silicone there and cover that up and keep this cap. And I'll still keep this cap, but I want to point out the irony that they put all this goop everywhere, but they use no glue to hold the caps in place. And both these largish radials are very loose. So I'm going to reflow their solder joints. And the only places in this entire amp I would have used silicone would have been on these two filter caps and the one which went bad. Everything else does not need to have silicone. If you got a connection like this, you want to reinforce maybe a small amount of silicone. Loctite's better, but you know, what do I know? I only do a couple thousand amps a year. Anyway, this will be a relatively easy fix. It should not have needed to be fixed though, because it was a cheap cap, used poorly. There may be some underlying problem which hastened the decline of that cap. I'll find out. The build quality is adequate for the price point. Let's put it that way. So let me clean these solder joints up and give some actual reinforcement for these two caps here and here, which have the wobbles. And I'll put a 47 microfarad F&T where the bad cap was. Put it all back together without the globs and globs of glue. Pointless, really. And we'll see how it's sounding and operating at that point. Well, I don't know if I'd recommend this amp to anyone, given the way it's built and the very cheap pots and the very regular, inexpensive switches that are disguised on the other side as full-size Carlings, etc., etc. But, you know, it works now. It doesn't blow up. Take my current limiter off, give it the full power. I had the wrong fuse in it too. I had a 2.5 amp fuse. Now it's got the correct 2 amp fuse. So last thing I've got to do, I'll do that off video, is they broke the locator key way off the 6L6. I've got some glue on ones. I'll glue that on just so the tube is more secure in the socket, but claims 13 watts. I think that's very generous, but you know, it's a nice little practice amp, home amp. Could be useful in some applications for studio. Here's dimed with a humbucker. Doesn't really have the goods as far as that goes, but you know, I'm sure it takes pedals. Fairly radical tone circuit. So, you know, it's not terrible. I'm not sure what it costs. I have a suspicion it's overpriced for what you get. When it does break up, it breaks up ugly. But when it's not breaking up, it sounds pretty cool. I stated my opinion with this amp out on my bench, and then I tried to put it back together again. And the 6L6 that came in this amp, which may or may not have been original to the amp, is making contact with the cover of this Alnico speaker. And this tube's got some discoloration, it's been running too hot. So I tried a Sovtek wafer base, coin base, 5881. Let me pause this so I can line the tubes up. Okay, that's the Sovtek 5881 in. Same issue. It's making contact with this cover. 5881 or 6L6. Well, it doesn't take the Sovtek 5881, which is the most common one on the market, which is very narrow. It certainly doesn't take a larger diameter 6L6. That's going to bang up against there too. And this seems to be the original factory speaker, this Alnico with this large cover. A ceramic would probably clear it. I need to talk to the owner. An EL34 would clear it. It's a much more narrow tube, but the circuit's not designed for an EL34, and it's not worth modifying. So I think the owner really needs to get another speaker or get his money back, because this is just a very poorly designed amp, even for Zinky. Sorry, it is what it is.